Hello, so about the Saxon tribes. So we have some writings from about 200 BC that show the Saxons were on the north side of the Elbe here in Holstein. And then later on we moved across the Elbe into what is today Niedersachsen and Holland, and then Westphalian, and a little bit of Saxon-Anhalt, a small amount, maybe about here. Okay? And then we were here for a long time. In about the year 400 AD, the Romans, while we were here, we were constantly fighting the Romans, right? Because they kept trying to come up, the Romans. We kept fighting them off. And then around 400 AD, we started going over to England because our population was getting too large. So whenever the population would get too large, the warriors of the tribe, the strong men, would volunteer to go and find new lands, to go become heroes, to go become mercenaries, to become warriors, to fight for another kingdom that needs its help, because the population was too large, and because the way we lived so that our populations would stay small but large enough to be healthy, so we wouldn't kill all the nature and resources around us. So when the population would get too large, some people would volunteer to leave, and these guys volunteered to leave to go fight for the Celtic Christian, because at this time the Celtic tribes were already Romanized and Christianized by the Romans, and then the Roman soldiers left the Celts because they had to go back to Italy, and the Roman Empire down in Italy, because the different Germanic tribes were invading the Roman Empire everywhere, and it was all falling apart, the political system and everything. So they just left these now Christianized Celtic people in England with no protection. And they were not trained to fight or anything. They lost their natural Celtic pagan way. And then what happened was they needed help, because they no longer had the Romans to protect them. So these warriors, who had to leave their tribe anyway, went and volunteered to go protect and expand the empire and protect the empire of the Christian Celtic people, who were being attacked in the north by the pagan Scottish people, or Picts, or whatever you want to call them, Gaelic and Celtic people from Ireland and all that. So all the pagans who were Celtic and Pictish and Gaelic and all that, and on the islands there, were coming down and attacking the Christians who were in the part that is today England, the Christian Celtics. And then, so we came there and we made bonds with them, we started fighting for them, and we expanded their empire, we protected them, and then we even allowed, the Christian king even married a pagan wife. He took a pagan bride of one of the Saxon leaders who went over there to go fight for him. One of the two brothers, and because it was two brothers who originally went, and Horst and Angus, I think their names were. But anyway, so he married one of their pagan sisters, and of course all the Christians didn't like that their Christian king married a pagan. And after they, basically saved England for them, and they thought we could all live together peacefully, pagans and Christians together. Of course, no, it couldn't be allowed. All the Christians told us to leave. And we took that as the ultimate sign of disrespect, because, we had fought and died for a very long time, almost 100 years expanding their empire and protecting their Christian empire, and now they kick us out because we were pagans and told us to go home. So what did we do? We went home, we raised an army, and we came back, and then we took over England and made England pagan. And then it was, hundreds of years of back and forth, some areas of England pagan, some areas of England Christian, and eventually the Christians took over all of Europe, of course. We know the story. So that's how that part went. And then later on, in about the 700s, so a few hundred years later, we still had all our Saxons here, right? We were all over this area now. And, out of the blue, the French Germans, the Franks, started speaking Latin when they were forced to become Christian from the Romans. So when they speak French, really what it is Latin with a German accent, a Frankish Germanic tribe accent. That is what the French language is. So anyway, they were all Christians, and of course, same thing, have to kill all the pagans or convert them. So they started coming up this way, and they wanted to expand their empire, and us Saxons had this big territory, and we said, okay, we will join your empire, we would like to be your friends, but you must allow us to remain pagan. And of course, this didn't work out, so we had the Saxon Wars. They lasted about 30 years. Well, really they lasted longer, kind of guerrilla warfare style. It lasted for hundreds of years. But the actual war itself lasted 30 years. And then they had a peace meeting. And of course, at the peace meeting, pagans knew you never bring a weapon to the peace meeting. So every single tribal Saxon chieftain and leader together went to go meet with all the Franks, Charlemagne and all the Franks, for peace talks. And 4,500 approximately is what the estimate was, went over to meet Charlemagne for peace talks. And of course, Charlemagne lied, and he had an entire army with him, and they forced them to convert and chop their heads off. But majority of them did not convert. Maybe a few were scared and cowards and they did convert, but it did not matter. It was a trick. Charlemagne chopped their heads off even if they did convert. So out of the blue, this entire large area was completely leaderless, except for one, Widukind, who was smart. He knew that the Christians were going to trick them. So he didn't join the 4,500 leaders who went. He fled up to Denmark. Many people say he was a coward for that. I do not think so. He was smart. He knew the Christians were not to be trusted, whereas the rest of them did not understand that Christians lie, whereas pagans do not lie. So, anyway, after that massacre happened, then all these people here were leaderless, so of course they were being, murdered, raped, and forced to become Christians. So all the Saxons started leaving and fleeing to the Slavic pagan lands. I mean, this was all Germanic mixed with Slavic tribes, okay? All pagans, different types of paganism, Germanic paganism, Slavic paganism. But that is what this area was at the time, different tribes. So all the Saxons who didn't want to, be forced in this Christian murder fest started going into Saxon-Anhalt, and then the Christians kept following, going east also. So then they went into the area that is here called today Saxony, which was actually full of Slavic people before. And so that is why these areas are all entitled Saxon. And there are also Saxons in Westphalian and in Nederland, Holland, and of course in Holstein, and parts of Mecklenburg here. But so that is how the Saxons spread across from here to here. And then later, after this was all, Holy Roman Empire happened, pagans couldn't run anywhere anymore after everything was Christianized, all the horrible crusades to Christianize Europe. And but after that, then they started this kingdom here, and they decided to call it Saxony, even though it was basically the kingdom of Dresden. But they decided to call it, and then there was Meissen also for a while. The kingdoms changed, Magdeburg and all that. But so basically they called this the kingdom, the Ducity of Saxony. So it's not, and the reason they called it that is because they understood that all these Germans who lived here were from the Saxon tribes from up north. They migrated this way when they were running away from Christianity. So that is the reason why we have Saxon-Anhalt, Saxon, and Niedersachsen. That is the reason why they all are parts of Saxony, and we have, the Low German Saxon languages all over this big area here. But so that is a little bit about the history of the Saxons and why there are 3 Saxon states in Germany. And really, Westphalians are Saxons too, and same with these East Dutch here are all Saxons also. So I thought I would share that little history, because even in Germany, many people do not understand why these are all Saxony when the Saxon tribe originates here. Why is this called Saxon and this called Saxon-Anhalt? But now we know why, because it is the same people. It is just, over 1,000 years ago, they were running and spread and migrated here, and that is why they are all Saxons. Okay? Dus.